Hi Nandini. Hi Ankita. Hi Aarti. Hi Trishala. So, hi Kash. Hi Costa Rica. Thank you all for joining. Hi Ishita. So guys, I would essentially be starting today with Chai with Chaitanya, which, as most of you would have already know, it is a mini talk show kind of a series that I had planned over this quarantine, and now we are finally here. So before I move in and tell you about what Chai with Chaitanya is going to be, I'm going to tell you a little about how Chai with Chaitanya came into existence. When I was in my school in my plus two, I was heading the magazine for the school, and I was the editorial board in charge. And my principal wanted a couple of section which was dedicated to interviews. And I came up with the name Coffee with Chaitanya when she was the one who told me that why am I being so uncreative, if that is a word, and why am I plagiarizing something. So she wanted me to come up with a more creative plan, and that is how Chai with Chaitanya was born. Now, the first session that we're going to have today is basically anti-heroes and part to redemption with Shruti Deb. Now, people who know me would know that Shruti and I are extremely close friends, but for the rest of you, Shruti is currently pursuing her bachelor's in law from DSNLU Vishakhapatnam, and probably the best way to describe Shruti would be that, when we were back in school, Shruti was participating in almost every single competition that there was to participate in. And the fun thing was that she was not only participating, but she was also winning most of them. And I'm not talking about creative writing and essay writing competition or handwriting competition. I'm talking about some serious kind of competitions. She has participated and won stuff in drama, in acting, in stage plays, in writing scripts, anchoring, debating, in academics. So all short, and I can see her laughing. She is a multitasker and an all-rounder, and both Shruti and I have developed a very good bond over movies and books, and obviously lots of chai. Even though sometimes it turns out to be coffee, and today it's Bonvita for me. But anyway, now I think it's the time that we are inviting Shruti to join. And how do I do this? Yes. So just a moment before Shruti comes live and we begin the discussion. Hi Rubaina, hi Shrestha, hi Purna, hi Vidhi, hi Yuvraj, hi Adya, hi Shruti, what's up?
Hi. All this false advertising for me that you have done. Where was this appreciation when I was actually winning those things? I
Yeah,
peaked in high school and you've told everybody that.
yeah, I mean, on that, I think I would like to also add on the fact a little bit about us, So I think when we were in school,
Hi,
Shruti and
Spandan, I see you.
I, yeah, is only Shruti gorgeous, Pandan? So, you know, so, so I think a little about Shruti and me would be that, when we were in school, when we were in DPS, we were always competing with each other. We had such a love-hate relationship back then, and it was difficult.
More hate, less love.
Yeah, I think actually that is the right way to put it. So, and then I think we both left DPS for almost the very same reason, and we went to take up humanities, and we landed up almost in two schools of the same management across the street. And I think those were the days when we did not really were at each other's necks, but then we weren't really talking. So it was more of a plowing field for us to start afresh. And by the time we class 12 boards came, we were discussing question papers, and we were, like making sure that we could, top our boards, which, let me remind you, that Shruti did in her school, and she was the topper
Oh,
for humanity. And here we are. And now I think, Shruti, we can, open the discussion for today. So
yeah.
let's start. So I think both Shruti and I have a very keen sense of understanding films. Maybe I do not have it as brilliantly as Shruti does, but we both love cinema, we both love books, and we have different tastes. That is quite natural because we are two different people at the end of the day. But one thing that has always stuck with both of us is redemption arcs, and how redemption arcs have played throughout movies and books or TV series or across fandoms. And in that sense, we have also to understand that these redemption arcs that we see are mostly, we witness them in characters who are not inherently good, and they don't always end up on the right side of the thing. And they often commit things which we would not want them to commit. Sometimes we don't even start by liking them. We like them over the period of time. So how do you, Shruti, you decide where to begin with, and as to what is an anti-hero? Like, because the title has anti-heroes and their path to redemption. So what is your idea of anti-hero?
So I think anti-heroes are just heroes that have been written well. I absolutely have a sheer distaste for characters which are goody two shoes throughout. Like, I get it, you're a hero, you're supposed to be brave, charming, smart, selfless, helpful, kind all the time. But I don't think those characters work for me outside of, well, Famous Five and Secret Seven. Both books I stopped reading at the age of 10. But I think heroes are defined by their protagonists with character flaws. And I don't think that it's fair to go ahead and push for characters in literature or in cinema where there aren't flaws, because you're just setting unrealistic standards and it's just untrue on so many levels.
Mm-hmm. So I think so. Like, what I understand from your point is that if a character is not complicated, it comes off as very single note, or maybe even two dimensional to an extent. So in that sense, I think complexity and adding nuances to a character is very important. And by that sense, like, I have come across so many people who have very often, every time there is a character whose intentions, motivations, and what he does goes beyond what you see. Like, you have to actually sit down and analyze that character, or look into who they truly are. That is when most people, simply choose to, label them as villains or bad characters, or on the wrong side. So like, do you think it is all right to, to hold complexity of a character synonymous to him or her being a bad character, or him or her being on the bad side? Like, are they both synonymous to each other?
Not really. I mean, I think there are a lot of bad characters, like quote unquote bad characters, which are just written a single note, right? Like, Voldemort's entire personality is that he's a bad guy. And there is
Yeah.
nothing beyond that, right? There's no character depth we get to find out what his motivations really are, except, like,
I
I don't know,
Shruti, I know
15
how much
minutes of exposition.
yeah, I know how much you hate Cursed Child, but I hate to bring this up. You would love to know that Voldemort had a baby with Bellatrix Lestrange, and they had sex.
Cursed Child is not canon for me. I pretend like it doesn't happen at all. Yes, what's up? I'm trying with my poker face. Dude, an embarrassing number of my college friends have joined. They're never going to let me live this down. So thank you for that. Yeah, but I think there are a lot of bad characters, these villains who are just written terribly. I
Yeah.
don't think that you need to be complicated to be bad. I think you can be complicated on either sides of the house. Some of my favorite protagonists are written as extremely complex characters, and that's how I like them. See, Sarvesh and I are on the same team. He says,
Yeah,
let's ignore Cursed Child. So,
yeah. Not that I take into account and I enjoy it with all my Harry Potter, but then yes.
absolute bakwas, dude. No, I can't, I like to pretend that that just did not happen. It's erased from my memory.
Yeah, so I think so in that sense, because you're discussing complex characters, so I mean, let's take up a few examples, like, let's take up Loki from Avengers, or maybe you can take up Steve Harrington from Stranger Things, or maybe you can also take up Klaus Michelson, who you told me that you haven't, like, watched. So maybe you can take up some example which you like from your own end.
Okay, so my favorite anti-hero is Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I know you don't
Yeah,
watch animated stuff, so you wouldn't know.
no
But
idea. Yeah.
yeah, so from like the characters that both of us like, I think
Yeah.
I really enjoy Loki's character arc throughout MCU. And I love how the entirety of his character arc product placement is done.
No, I was showing that for my Marvel pride because you mentioned Loki.
No, I'm
Yeah,
showing this because you forced me to bring a cup and sit. So
because
just so that
it's
everybody knows.
yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah, so I think what was I saying? Right. I was specifically talking about Loki, right? And I love how it's touch and go with his character arc because I think he has incredibly high points
Mhm,
because they come out of nowhere and they take you by surprise. Like when
mhm,
he is willing to give up his life to save Thor's. And I think all of that is really well done. But what really compounds it for me is the way that they take a great amount of time to establish what his backstory is, right? Like where he comes from. And he was
mhm.
supposed to be the Prince of Jotunheim and all of that. And I think
Yeah.
my favorite part of that arc is even right at the very end, right? Like right before he dies, he still goes ahead and steals the Tesseract. So like I love
Yeah.
redemption arcs which don't change the character in their entirety because I just
Entirely.
don't think those are honest redemption arcs. Like if you're changing who the person is, it's not
Mhm.
fair. Like 'cause that's again that's not realistic. The reason why I like anti-heroes and redemption arcs is because they're realistic to begin with, right?
Begin with, yeah. So I think in that there you have a point because when I look at redemption arcs, I see that what redemption arcs are not really different from reality in the sense that we as humans also aren't really made of completely of good stuff or the bad stuff. That the world is not divided into good people and Death Eaters, as Sirius would put it.
Yeah.
So that way, I think when we talk about redemption arcs, there are some redemption arcs which are so memorable, then there are some redemption arcs which were so bad that you just did not buy into it, and then there are some redemption arcs which have been so problematic that they have created this entire controversy around the people who support those redemption, support those characters to be on the good side versus those who be on the bad side. So I think before we go ahead, I would like all of you guys who are watching this live to, probably put into your favorite characters who have undergone redemption arcs and, who have a
Yeah.
proper redemption arc so that me and Shruti can probably, take that up in a while towards the
Yeah,
end
or
of this
even if
episode.
you think they didn't get proper redemption arcs, or you would have liked them to
Yeah.
have redemption arcs. I love playing the devil's advocate, so I love
Yeah.
thinking of characters who should have had
let's
redemption
not,
arcs.
let's not forget we have a lawyer in making. So so if you have a character who you like, and you think that he or she did not get a redemption that they deserve, then you can just maybe let us know in the comments, and we would love to take that up. So
Yeah, yeah, or
yes,
even like your favorite anti-heroes, anything that you'd like us to talk about in this regard.
in this regard, yeah. So, so now, Shruti, I think we would begin with the fact that now, could you tell me a little bit about what you understand redemption in its literal sense, as to where it comes from, and how like where is the idea being born from, and how it has been, like how it has gone into films and books and overall, because it's not something that is new. It's not something that has happened only in Game
Yeah.
of Thrones, Harry Potter. It's been happening since time immemorial. It is there even in
Sarvesh
millions.
said Malfoy. Sarvesh said Malfoy. I have so much, dude. I have a lot of Malfoy content that I want to talk about. We will get to that. Riju
Did
said
you
Game of Thrones. Jamie Lannister also. It's a part of this. Um, but yeah, quickly before that, I think redemption arcs. The reason why they're so omnipresent in books and cinema is because they're a fantasy. They don't
Mhm,
happen in real life. And I mean,
mhm,
not to sound like such a cynic, I think the reason they don't happen in real life is because you don't have objectively terrible people also in real life. So for a
mhm.
redemption arc to happen, it has to start out at a certain point of time where you cannot like that character under any circumstances, right? Like, for example, if an incestuous man was to throw away like a 6-year-old child from a really high tower, you don't like him. Like your instinctive reaction is not that, hey, that's my favorite character. However, I think what literature can then go ahead and do is go build an arc for themselves where they, through their own actions, redeem themselves, right? I don't think that that happens in real life simply because we don't exist in linear narratives like books and movies. We
Yeah.
probably engage in really great and really terrible things at the same time parallelly. So yeah, redemption arcs exist in such a great extent because it's everybody's fantasy that someday they're going to like undo everything wrong that they've done. And I sound so depressing, so I think it's time to cut to happier things to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't think we can go on to be exactly happy at this moment because now that we have opened up a discussion for redemption arcs, so I think we would love to take up, one of our favorite redemption arcs, which at least I know of, which is of Jaime Lannister from Game of Thrones. Now,
Yeah.
we already had like a small prenup discussion about how we cannot exactly introduce Jaime Lannister to people who are not acquainted with his character or who are not acquainted with the Game of Thrones because it would be
I can see
to it,
who is here.
but you can probably
These
still
people
try.
all know Jamie Lannister, dude. There's an embarrassing number of my college friends here.
Yeah.
But and I think all of them know who Jamie Lannister is.
Yeah, so I think that would work in our favor. So I think if that is the case, then we should move ahead, and then I think we should talk a little about how even here, if we if we make a quick poll, if there was an option to make a quick poll, we would see that there are so many people who see Jaime Lannister character as somebody who when in the end he started his writer's journey, so they started liking him. Versus there were some people who still considered him to be a villain or somebody who's bad because of the things that he committed in his
I
life.
think we can take a quick poll. Guys, you can like put down yes and no. Do you think Jamie Lannister got a decent redemption? Are you a Jamie Lannister fan? Like, do you think he's a good character? Do you think he's an hero or an anti-hero? Just like let us know in the comments. I sound like a YouTuber, but
No.
um,
This video would be saved and later put onto YouTube. So be safe. You'll be there as well.
never tell me these things before you get me into them. Okay, but yeah, Jamie Lannister in particular, I think the reason why I switched to so stringently being Team Jamie is because based on the kind of character that he consistently was for the first half of the show, I think it was incredibly selfless, right? The shock value of how selfless it is to say that you can chop off my arm and that's something that I would do to protect Brienne. I think it's to a great extent the sheer shock value of him going ahead and doing something like that that made me become like a Jaime Lannister convert. But I think other than that as well, there are certain specific. Just give me a second. I'm getting a call. Right, but I think also other than that, the fact that the self-actualization that happens through Jamie's journey, right? Like how cognizant he becomes aware of how he's done really wrong, really bad things, but he doesn't go on making excuses about them for himself in his head, right?
So a couple of people have something to say about Jamie. Poorna, my friend from college, says she always liked Jamie from the start, and I think somewhere deep down, even I like Jamie because not because of what he
can't
did.
read. Just a second. I think my net's being glitchy.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to reconnect. Just like, can you send me a request again?
Yeah. So guys, we'll have Shruti join with us again. Just figure out how exactly do I ask her to join. So difficult.
Yes, I have returned.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Please continue. You were saying something.
Yeah. So so I was saying that my friend Poorna from college just wrote in the comments that she liked Jamie from the very beginning. Okay, and to that, to add something very personal, that when Jamie was introduced in season 1, I cannot say that I liked him for of all things that he did, pushing Bran out of the window of a high tower.
Yeah, he was an incestuous king murderer, child attempted murderers. Who is your friend? Why did she like him from season 1? What is the issue?
I cannot say that I liked him, but I always admired him. I mean, so you have to give it to Nicolaj Coster-Waldau, who plays Jaime Lannister. He's incredibly hot, has a beautiful jawline, and his hair is so perfect. So I think I was taken away with that fact when he was introduced. But the moment he pushed Bran out of the window, that was a time when I had an internal conflict I'm like, can I really like this man and do this to myself? to my character. Just
He
to like,
pushed Bran out of the window in season 1.
yeah,
But season 1, episode
first
1 was,
first
yeah,
episode.
it ended with him pushing out Bran. Within the span that one episode, where did you develop this affinity for Jaime Lannister when he doesn't really do much throughout the entire episode only?
I'm not saying I developed anything. I'm just saying that it's not easy, it's sort of easy to get carried away with the fact that the way he comes off, like the perfect knight in the white shining
Yeah, yeah.
armor, golden hair, and being proud and everything.
He was
So
hot. Let's get it,
yeah,
get past it. He was hot. That's the only issue.
yeah. So anyway, so now I think I want you to talk about how like when, because like let's retrace Jamie's story back. Like you talked about
I
how
don't know who Banarasi Lass is, but you're speaking to my soul right now. Massive relate.
Mhm.
Right, yeah. Who are you talking about? Also, Sarvesh had written something about Ned Stark before I disconnected very unceremoniously. So you can like put that in the chat again. I want to talk about Ned Stark also. I hate Ned Stark, by the way. Very goody two shoes, meh
Uh,
character.
even I don't really like Ned Stark. I just feel too sorry for him. I don't have any other feelings for him. And he's just
Yeah,
too. But
बहुत
anyway,
होता है. That's it. That's my only takeaway from Ned Stark.
yeah. But we're not talking about Ned Stark right now. So let's go back to Jaime
Mhm.
Lannister, his story. So
Mhm.
so can you let's focus on this fact about how his change was not started until unless he moved away from the source. Like you have to identify that a lot in his life is the is defined by Cersei and his relationship with Cersei. So initially when he was being held captive and with by Miss Catelyn Stark, he kills his cousin and all of those heinous crimes that he commits. It is to get back to Cersei. But the moment we have Brienne coming into the picture, and she's sort of starts seeing who Jaime really is beyond all that the world has given him, the Kingslayer label. I think that is the time when he truly begins. So could you talk a little about how the external factors have also shaped a lot in his character development in a redemption arc? You have a patchy connection. You, I think, should.
And suddenly in his life, I hate it when that happens. Which is why I really
Yeah,
appreciate how they went ahead with the Jamie Brienne dynamics, right? It was never out and out romance. It
yeah,
wasn't like she was healing him or fixing him or any of that. It's just that when he was around her, he put in effort to be better because he was so desperate for external validation that he was willing to actually put in the work and change. Also, Sarvesh, agree to
yeah.
disagree. I put the entire blame of Ned Stark's death on Peter Baelish and maybe a little bit on Joffrey being a word that I don't want to say my parents are watching. But yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't all Jamie, dude. Yeah, sorry. You were
Yeah.
saying?
So no, Shruti, so now I mean you focused on the external aspects of a person and how that affects you in your journey. But like for those of you who have read George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, would know that Jamie is a very complex character in the way he's written. Okay, for example, when even when in the show when he reveals to Brienne of Tarth about his decision to kill the kings to kill the Mad King, we go on to see the dilemma that he faced. Okay, like it was so, like I think he was a man who always was caught up in such a place that no matter what he chose, he would still turn out to be the bad person. Okay, so in the case of Mad King, he had a duty towards this king and had to follow that. A king who wanted to
Yeah.
burn an entire to the grounds, versus he could have let that happen, and the history would remember him as the knight who allowed so many innocents, infants, children, women, all to die. Versus
Yeah.
when he tried to do something good for the world and tried to save every single person of King's Landing, he went
Yeah.
ahead to become the Kingslayer because also he had
But
that legacy of
but he
of
only he only killed he only killed the Mad King once the armies of the Lannisters had already stormed King's Landing. So Jaime Lannister is really not as good as you portray him to be, okay? He's not like a golden child who was wronged all his life. I think he was, and
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, a really terrible person as well. Because
Yeah.
that's why he's called a Kingslayer, right? Because he only slayed the king when it was convenient for him. When he knew for a fact that the war would be won by Robert Baratheon's army, that's exactly
Mhm.
when he went ahead and killed him. Like, I'm sure as the king's guard, there would have been more than one opportunities to go ahead and off a really old king. But he only
Mhm.
does it when it's most convenient to him, and I think that's why I love Jaime Lannister so much. That's what I
Mhm.
would do, dude. That's because it makes sense to kill him when you know you won the war. I
Yeah.
love him
Yeah.
because he's selfish and he's real and he's smart, and I think that's what I want to see in a real character that I can root for. Jon Snow
Yeah.
is so difficult for me to root for because I would never make some of the decisions he makes. Because I want to shake him by his shoulders sometimes and tell him, like,
Yeah.
just don't
Or,
do this.
no,
This
no,
is bad decision.
or maybe just get inside the screen and slap him. Like, just
Yeah.
get back into your senses. Like, what are you doing? Right?
Yeah, so when Ygritte gets shot with the bow, instead of feeling sad, my first reaction was, I told you so.
Yeah.
Because I knew that was going to happen when he trusted those kids. So that's my issue with writing characters who are so straitjacket, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Daenerys becomes a much more interesting character in the last season. I think the
Mm-hmm.
last season and the first season are Daenerys' best seasons because that's
Yeah.
when she goes ahead and does like some actual evil things, right? Like when she gets Viserys' head melted
So,
off, and when
yeah,
even
and
when she's burning King's Landing. I
Mhm.
like cool badass characters who will do things to get where they want to get, right?
No, Shruti, and also I think the reason why you like Daenerys as a character, even though like we are not
Mhm.
talking about Daenerys Targaryen people, we're discussing redemption now. But
Yeah, yeah.
reason why you like Daenerys in the first season and in the last season is because probably those are the only two seasons where her character actually grows. I don't care if she grows from being good to being better, or if she grows from being good to bad or whatever. But then there is a change, there's a growth. But in the rest
Yeah.
of the season, there's nothing happening. She's just dealing with the everyday mundane affairs of all the cities that she's conquering, giving the same lecture again and again about how she is the
Yeah, yeah.
so-called queen that is being promised and everything. So yeah,
Breaker
I mean
of chains.
yeah, the breaker of
I have
chain.
that whole monologue by heart. That was my Instagram bio for the longest time, so you would know.
Yeah, I do remember. So was a lover of chai. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
love that. I've known that since.
Placeholder cup is still here, guys.
Yeah, I think now I think so. Shuri, could you like talk a little about what is the decision? How do you see the decision of Jamie going back to Cersei and like him leaving Brienne after that one night stand that they had? Okay, and after bubbling of those sexual tension between the two of them, which started right from season 2 when they got inside. Sorry, season 3 when they got inside that bathtub. I mean, it started
You're
there
saying
and
very uncomfortable things. My mother's just written in the comments, love this. My parents are watching. Another reminder this is.
yeah, no, that is fine. I think they understand we are grown ups and we are grown up stuff. That is all cool. Thankfully, you and I aren't born into those families who trip about all of those things. So let's just take the liberty and move ahead with that, right?
Yeah, so I am a big fan. You know this already. I'm a big fan of Jamie going back to Cersei. I wish he had done more when he went back. I wish he had like mercy killed Cersei because he knew she was going to die anyway. I wish he was the one that put the sword through her. That would also bring true the prophecy that happens in the book. And like
Sure,
I'm a book fan. I'm a book fan. I'm not a like series
sure.
comes secondary to me, especially given how they ended it. So
I
I
know.
just felt that I knew he would go back, right? Like again, going back to why I really liked Loki's arc as well. They don't change him as a human being. I
Yeah.
don't think season 8 Jamie would go ahead and murder babies if Cersei asked him to. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, because his love for Cersei is so
Above everything.
insurmountable for him,
Yeah.
yeah,
It is above
he would always go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
I don't understand why there is so much hate for why Jamie went back. I mean, I would have been really surprised if he didn't go back, because that's his entire identity, right? Like the entire time, that's who he was. Like unconditional love for his sister and what he would do for his family. Which is why he agrees for like trial by combat for Tyrion and just so many things that he does. It would have been really breaking away from character if he would have known that Cersei is about to die, and he would have been like, yeah, whatever. I don't see him as that kind of a character.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know what, I think what people, sort of expected from his character was, like we all want to see, like the bad becoming the good, and like, the over expectation of all of it. So we wanted to, for him to end up in a better way than he did. Like probably most people, like, for example, I wanted, like, if I wanted him dead, I wanted him dead, by, like, let's say Night King coming and killing him, like, him going and, fighting in
like a hero ending for him.
Like the hero ending for him, but then he truly does not get hero ending because at the end of the day
he dies under a pile of bricks, dude. Construction site accident is what leads to his death.
Yeah, malve ke niche dab ke mar gaya is how Danny Chavran. Yeah, right. So even though I have a lot of international audience also seeing this, I hope you guys understand Malva. But anyway.
No, but I think on that idea, this is where I'm going to quickly segue into talking about Draco Malfoy a little bit. When you talk about how desperately we want to see characters get better, right? So I think that is an issue with me, and I blame all of it on Bollywood. It's because I have just grown up watching films where I must root for there to be like a proper redemption arc at the end, and everybody's happy and everybody's crying. Of course, that's not what happened to me once I started reading and watching more movies. And Draco Malfoy is the primary example of it, right? So Draco Malfoy never gets a redemption arc, and yet we talk about Draco Malfoy in every single conversation about a redemption arc, right? Like, I think because all of us grew up with Harry Potter the way that we did, we were so desperate for at least like all the main characters to still be good at the end, which is why I think She Who Must Not Be Named also puts him at the end of the book, right? We see Draco and his family at the end as well. And I think that largely has to do with the kind of attachment that we develop with these characters, like our desperation to see them get better under any circumstances. Like, I think the only other character I felt it to that extent with was watching Walter White on Breaking Bad, right? Like, it was so much fun watching him be evil, but I just really wanted, like, something to happen, right? Like, something to click in his life, and he's like, you know what? I'm a better man than this. I have a family to protect, and I really like Mike, so I'm gonna go back. But it just does not happen. And it's the same with Draco. So because I used to read so much of Draco fan fiction, and all of those fan fictions had him at a happy ending, I very recently actually sat and thought to myself and realized that in fact Draco does not get a redemption arc. So Sarvesh, what were you talking about? What redemption arc? That one time when he doesn't straight up murder Harry when they're brought to the Malfoy's manor should not count as a redemption arc, okay? That one time he didn't even actively do anything. He just kept quiet. And we've assigned that the title of a redemption arc, and we've left it at that.
Yeah. No, and I think also that, Shruti, I think what happens, the reason why we root for Draco, why so many of us root for Draco, is also because, probably understand that where is he coming from? He's coming from a family, like, who's completely toxic. In the first film, when he just wants to be friends with
because Harry had such a wholesome family, growing up. Petunia and Vernon were parenting goals. I don't see, that's my issue, right? We so desperately want to look at like all these flawed characters as good people, and I think it does a great disservice to people who actually have those character flaws and still get past it, right? Like, I think Ron grows up with a huge inferiority complex because of all of his older siblings, and I mean, Harry grows up in an objectively terrible household, right? Like, he's mistreated, his birthday is not celebrated, he has to hide cake under the floor. So I mean, toxic family is not an excuse for Draco Malfoy to be the person that he is. A reason, sure, but it's not an excuse.
So Shruti, I think, because you said that, like, toxic things are not a reason for why, we should blame him for the way he turned out.
Just a second. Somebody called the Champ 2208. He has redeeming moments, but not an arc. So we discussed this before, and I think the clear redeeming moment for us was when he decided to keep quiet when he was asked to recognize if that was in fact Hermione, Harry, and Ron. If you can
Yeah.
think of anything else, please put it in the chat because I really racked my brains for it and I couldn't think of anything in particular. Yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah. So, so no, because, you said about the fact that, a toxic environment or the kind of history that the person is coming from does not, really determine the kind of person your actions would be in a lot of ways. So I think that is a nice place to pick up about the fact that how some redemption arcs don't really work, or so as to say that, even though there are redemption arcs, but then people don't accept it because it's just probably too problematic to, to digest it. And I think one
Yeah.
of the most controversial redemption arc aside from Ginny Lannister is again from another popular fandom that we both love, is Harry Potter, and is of Severus Snape. Now,
I was waiting for this to come up.
I know both of us are at very different tangents over here, because I mean, I don't hate Severus Snape, but I don't love him also, which is again a part of how you feel about anti-heroes in the first place.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, see, exactly. Akhil has written Malfoy was pampered. Exactly my point. There are people who've grown up in like poor households with worse parents and like a mom who doesn't love them. Draco has no
Yeah.
excuse except that he was just like a bad person. And it took me a lot of pain to convince this to myself because my first Twitter account was Shruti_Feltson, guys. So it took me a lot of struggle to realize that Tom Felton and Draco Malfoy are separate people.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, so on Snape, you should go first. I think you have the more popular opinion. You dislike Snape like most people do. So you should go
No,
first. And I shall then defend him.
I think the thing with me is that I do not completely dislike Snape into the fact that I start hating him, or I hate him for what he did, because I understand he protected Harry for so long, and the way whatever his protection was, probably that was his way of showing the most amount of what he cared for Harry, in a way, while he cared for the mother, or for Lily's eyes in Harry. Okay, that is a sick idea to think, but then I mean that is how he puts it, right? But at the end of the day, my question still, the dilemma that I face with Snape is the fact that why would he be such a evil, like such a mean person to the rest of the Gryffindor people, right? Like it's because because him as a teacher, I understand that the rivalries between the houses, but then he is constantly being bad to every single Gryffindor person that I can think of. Okay? And be it Padma, be it Parvati, he has had encounters with every single one of them. And if I go back and reread the book, there have been so many examples of the number of times he's been bad to Hermione, even though she's the topper of her class. He's been bad to Ron because he's the friend of Harry Potter. He's been bad to Dean. He's bad to Seamus. He's been bad to Neville. He's been incredibly bad to Neville. Just because, we understand by the fact that the prophecy that was prophesied could have also been for Neville, who was also born on the same day as Harry Potter. And to Snape, he probably believes that if it would have been Neville, then probably he wouldn't have to, undergo this entire thing, because Voldemort would have gone for Neville and not Harry. So for that, he would have never killed Lily. While I don't understand how that works, but yeah. So that is where my key takeaway is that he's a bad person, okay, like, or maybe he's not a bad person, just a vengeful person, or he's just a uncle who does not
Hey,
like
Shelly is here. Hi, Shelly. Shelly is a big Harry Potter fan, by the way.
Yeah. So for those people who just do not like other people, and they just cannot keep it to themselves, and they have to tell you that they do not like you. He's one of those people for me, and I do not care if that person is protecting. Somebody mentioned, Tam mentioned, he tormented Neville. I think that is the right word.
Yeah, I just saw. I'm gonna have such an uphill climb defending this. But so here's my deal with Snape, right? I think we've all had professors like Snape. I have been ill-treated by so many separate teachers my entire school life, and I'm sure everybody has. Like, there's a one teacher who has an issue with you for no reason at all. So I think Snape was an extremely bitter human being, and his experiences from school were far from pleasant, right? So I think, and of course, none of this excuses behavior. He's a bully, he's a bad teacher, and he shouldn't be where he is. However, I don't think that those are things that objectively make him a bad person, because I think those are characters that we see all throughout. I think Lockhart is an objectively worse person than Snape is. Snape is rude to his students, a bully to Neville, sure, no questions about that. But Lockhart is being a fraud to everybody at large. Like, he could put children's lives at risk as he actually does at the very end, right? So I think the reason why we hate Snape so much is because of how Snape was written. We were never meant to like Snape. That was She Who Must Not Be Named's big reveal, right? When she was writing the book, that's how she decided she wanted to go about it. So
And,
she
you know,
always wanted us to root against Snape. Like, even in Philosopher's Stone, I think. Right, sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, so I was saying before people start questioning us that why we are calling the author of Harry Potter She Who Must Not Be Named, we should also delve quickly into a little bit of history about what she's doing right now. So, as most of you would already know, she's right now in an ongoing controversy about trans women and the fact that she does not believe that trans women are supposed to be women because they have undergone a sex surgery.
Let's not go into the details of what she says. She's become a very
not
problematic individual, and she's just.
Yeah.
I.
You're not
This is
going
a book
to-
that I've always cherished, and this is a book that we've grown up with. I don't like associating her with just good
Exactly.
memories that I have with this.
Yeah, and plus, I would also like to like all of you to remind you that this space, this both of us in this place is a LGBTQ pro
Oh,
thing.
definitely.
So you're all happy here, okay? And we are desperately waiting for J.K. Rowling to go on to a good redemption arc so that we can again root back for her, if that ever happens. But then again, we are not expecting.
See, again, I think this is a beautiful segue to something that we decided we would talk about, right? So, something that we wanted to discuss is if we think there are some things that are deal breakers in a character arc. Like, if there is something that a character does beyond which, like, you think that if he's done this, there can be no redemption, right? Which is what I think Sarvesh wrote in the comments. Like, when Jamie killed Ned Stark, there was no going back for him. And I think that's highly subjective from person to person.
Jamie never kills Ned Stark. Jamie just like he attacks Ned
Arrest
Stark.
him. Yeah, that's what I told him as well. Like, I mean, Peter and Joffrey are the only people you can blame for it, but Sarvesh seemed to think that Jamie's to be blamed as well. I mean, whatever. Game of Thrones has so many interpretations. You do you, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
So, with regard to deal breakers, I think the kind of things that J.K. Rowling has been consistently doing for a while, but have now come into the spotlight very recently, I think that's a deal breaker for me, especially given the kind of image that she has consistently portrayed, given that she's written a book, the point of which is like equality and inclusion and love. I think that's extremely hypocritical. So I think things like that don't have redemption arcs for me. But I think more realistically to do with I don't know if any of you have watched Gossip Girl, but I watched Gossip Girl from season 2, and Chuck Bass, that is the protagonist, attempts rape in the first season. I watched it from season 2 because that's what was playing on TV, so I didn't know about that. And he was my absolute favorite till the very end. And then I went back and I rewatched the first season for nostalgia value and kicks, and I can never watch that show again. I ruined it for myself. But yeah, I think rape is something that I think I can't look past it. Like, it's not like a bad decision or like a character flaw in somebody. It just tells me that they're an irredeemable character.
So Shruti, so can I ask you a question? Like, so if rape, so like, I mean, if you're putting rape on a pedestal like that, where where you say that after on this I cannot see a character redeeming himself, but then there are people. Now I'm not comparing two different crimes because you cannot do different stuff. But at the end of the day, how do you accept those characters who have done probably have murdered millions of people? Or
I'm very cool with murder. I am fine with people. Murder is, I think it's like a chill crime to commit. I think so much of fiction has made me immune to it. I don't think committing a murder is an irredeemable part of an arc. I think, and I mean, at the risk of sounding like a serial killer, I feel like I have to justify why I think so. I think fiction in general has made me very immune to like characters murdering characters, even if it's like a character I really love and adore. I think that's just like an accepted part of fiction now. Like, that's something that's going to happen. So murdering is chill for me. I don't think anybody sees like committing a murder as an irredeemable flaw. Especially like if they watch TV shows or read books regularly, it shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be. Yeah.
Vani is here. Hi, Vani. Rohan is here. Hi, Rohan.
Yeah. So, so as you were discussing, somebody in the comments here mentioned that how this film, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, also had a redemption arc. Now, which is very interesting because when I look at Three Billboards, I see the character of this McDormand as a person who, she's changing and growing, but she's not redeeming herself truly because I mean, I don't see how that works. So, like, could you shed some light on that? Because it's a very interesting thing. And I remember you were the one who, asked me to watch this film because before that I haven't, like, somehow I'd never heard of the film before, even though it won an Oscar for it, but then I hadn't heard about it. So, like, could you shed some light on that?
So I think when we shift from pop culture to more serious cinema, like Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, none of them aim for a complete redemption arc, right? I don't think that any of these films, and I think a comparison to this would be, what is that Casey Affleck film that he won an Oscar for? Manchester by the Sea. All of these tell us that there are redeemable qualities in certain characters, but they don't complete that redemption arc for us simply because, again, how completion of a redemption arc is unrealistic, right? In its very essence.
Yeah.
So I think. Continue.
So I think also, I think that is the right place to pick up the fact that, redemption arc in themselves, we saw one where it's a limited redemption arc for Jamie Lannister. We saw one where a redemption arc does not work. Probably, let's say Severus Snape or Draco. For Draco, it never existed in the first place.
Yeah.
But we want redemption for him, right?
Also, take back what you said. Severus Snape's redemption arc worked. Okay, we didn't get into that, but yeah, it worked.
So I think यहाँ पे I think you can maybe you can pick up on the fact that there are different kinds of redemption arc even when you talk about redemption. There's so many different kinds of and ways in which redemption works. So so like could you pick up some examples and from different movies because you've discussed too much about fandom now. So maybe you can pick up individual TV shows or maybe characters who you found interesting or maybe and it does not necessarily need to have a redemption arc. Just maybe you can anti-heroes or maybe
I'm currently binge watching Bojack Horseman, so you have now opened Pandora's box. Bojack Horseman is, I think, the least likable character as a protagonist that I have seen. He does so many really, really problematic things, but I think the narrative string is such, it still makes you root for him. It still makes you sympathize, if not empathize, with where he comes from. And I think this is what is central to every redemption arc, right? Like, regardless of the events that you show, if the events are incapable of generating empathy from these people, from your viewers or your readers, it does very little to impact what that redemption arc is eventually going to mean, right? So I think, characters like Fleabag, Phoebe Waller-Bridge in Fleabag is an absolute favorite of mine. I have binge-watched that too many times over and over again. But I think more common, which I think everybody would know about, are characters like Marlon Brando. There are characters like Walter White in Breaking Bad. I think there was somebody in the comment sections also who spoke about it. So I think when you shift the narrative lens to a character that is inherently negative, which is what Walter White is, he's a drug dealer. Banarasi Lass, I have not finished Bojack, okay? No spoilers. I have not finished it. I'm only on season 3. Alright, Rohan just written about Walter White.
I can see that.
Right,
he says, I read it out for the audience who's watching. How do you guys Walter White redemption work? He's able to save Jesse and get money for his family despite causing them all trauma. Okay, so I haven't watched Breaking Bad, so I can't answer this, but can take this up.
I'm a big fan. So I don't. Okay, so I think the reason why Walter White's redemption arc works is because, spoiler alert to anybody who's not seen it, it's because he dies. Otherwise, I think the pattern that Breaking Bad establishes for us is there is a constant crest and a fall in his arc. That every time you think he's in fact a good human being, he will just go ahead and do the most obnoxious things. He will go ahead and stand as his best friend's girlfriend dies and not save her because he's possessive of his best friend. He will go ahead and try to poison children. So I think the only reason why there is a kind of finality in what happens at the end of Breaking Bad is because we know that beyond that point he can't go ahead and do something even more heinous than what he'd done the last time. So like Walter White's redemption arc only works for me because the arc was the ending of his life in itself. Like I don't think, because I think if he would have lived on, he would have just gone back to his old ways. I think there are just some characters that are beyond eternal redemption, which is like Jaime Lannister going back to Cersei.
So, so I think, what I have understood, or maybe we all know it this somewhere deep down within us, that, to conclude and, sort of to summarize whatever we discussed today, I think the point here stands that, when we talk about redemption arcs, we have to take into account that, characters, just like real life human beings, they are not exactly, good people or bad people, they are great people. So,
hi Saurabh, hi Anjali.
And their redemption, and their redemptions, why? Because it's a work of fiction, and it has a tangible aspect to it, like it has time, it has space, and something that you cannot exactly essentially touch. So so it moves in a linear fashion, or it has a finality. Versus in life, when it is so different and it is so broad, and you can't take up a person's life and put it into a 3-hour movie, because it's like really difficult cutting out like major chunks of it. So I think that way, speaking, could you also talk a little about how these certain redemption arcs, which show the more real side of it, like Jaime Lannister, we spoke, it does, and maybe second, you take up, maybe Theon Greyjoy as well as Sandor Clegane, again from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Reason I'm taking
I really disliked Theon Greyjoy's redemption arc because I think they did the exact opposite of what they did with Jaime's arc. Jaime's arc played out over a span of at least 6.5 seasons, where we saw that entire curve happening. But with Theon Greyjoy, it was just too fast. I think even when right at the beginning he takes over control of the of Winterfell and he declares himself Lord, and then he kills his brothers, and then we're supposed to sympathize with him when Ramsay Bolton's in the scene. However, right at the end, he's given a chance to save his sister, but he doesn't do it. He's too scared. And then right at the very end, in a glorious show of toxic masculinity, he beats up a dude and thinks he's man again. I thought it was very hastily done. I think if that's where they were going with the character, there was a lot more footwork that needed to go into it. Madalsa's here. Hi, Madalsa. Madalsa, we're discussing our favorite anti-heroes. I know you read a lot, so like, let me know if there's something you want us to talk about. So yeah, I didn't think Theon Greyjoy was a decent arc or even like a good anti-hero. Because even at the very end, when he's redeeming himself, all I feel for him is just like pity, and like I just want him to get done with whatever he wants to get done with.
True. Also, Shruti, like when, because obviously we all do a little bit of research before such sessions. So when I went online, I was looking into, the most memorable redemption arcs. So, to my amazement, it listed Sansa Stark as well as Sandor Clegane in that list. Okay. Now I'm not saying that these two characters did not really have a redemption arc, but then when I look at them,
I'm a big Sansa fan. I will fight you on that.
Yeah,
I'm a huge Sansa fan.
I love who Sansa became in the end. But what I'm trying to to put across here is that her completely because in from the very starting, she isn't exactly an anti-hero per se. She doesn't come across as an you just feel initially when you start seeing you probably empathize with her, or even if you do not empathize, you see where it is all coming from. Like she wants to be the lady and marry Joffrey, and she's so innocent and everything that she believes in the queen is powerful and beautiful and she's going to protect her. And
she's a child.
Child, right? And then then she goes into the mansion and everything, and once her father's head, like he's beheaded, that is when things get real for her. And there so there onward, I don't think Sansa did anything which we can say was bad, quote unquote, because everything that she had to do was under the under the pressure. Like even when she wrote to Rob,
no, of course it was bad, because I think in that position a lot of other people wouldn't have done the same even if they belong to her age group. In fact, if I were to look at all of Sansa's siblings, I don't think any of them would have made the kind of choices that she did when she was in King's Landing in the first season. So for me, Sansa's redemption arc is just her becoming a character with a spine, dude. Because I think
Yeah,
in the first season, for the
I
first couple of seasons, in fact, till Peter Baelish is done with her, she was somebody who would do what she was told to do. And I
yeah,
think there were a lot of unnecessarily grisly details in Sansa's arc. I didn't think
yeah.
Ramsay Bolton was necessary to her character arc. We had already reached a point where I thought that Sansa was redeemed. But since they threw us back into that lurch with her, I think she's got an incredible character arc to it. Because first season, I thought she was one of my least favorite characters. Because my contrast to her was Arya. And
Yeah,
you can't compete with Arya in the first season. She was everybody's first favorite character across the board, I think.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think
So
also, like you mentioned about Sansa, this is not again, to do with redemption.
yeah, just a
I
second. I have not read Percy Jackson.
see Jackson. Even I
Um,
have not seen Jackson.
Yeah, because I thought I was too cool for it by the time it became normal. I was like reading like heavy fiction. Now I have only regrets. I hate those books that I was reading then now, but I'm still talking about Harry Potter as you can see. But yeah, I plan on reading Percy Jackson. I just can't find the right order to read the books in. There are just too many versions of it. But I will read Percy Jackson. I really want to, and I think that there's a TV series also coming out. There's a Netflix version of it coming out, so I want to finish reading everything before that. Yeah, you
Yes.
were saying?
Yeah, so I was saying, you mentioned about Sansa, 'cause, in Sansa's story, you had Ramsay Bolton coming in. So I don't know how many people who are watching here would also know this, but in the books, it never happens. Okay. So in the book, Sansa never is married to Ramsay Bolton in the first place.
Yeah, but
Okay.
Ramsay's dogs rape Sansa in the books. The books are
No,
worse.
yeah, so books,
They
books are
do.
first.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
the book, what happens? So, what Peter Baelish does is he brings a northerner girl and he makes
Yeah.
her who's very close to Sansa and who's also Sansa's friend. Okay, and
Yeah.
she's like a shepherd's girl is what is described in the book, and she
Mhm.
is she is from the north, and she's brought to the castle of Vale, which is where
Yeah.
Littlefinger is after he pushes Lysa Arryn through the moon door. And there, he plans a mastermind plan to, to go ahead and, marry this girl and making
Yeah,
him
yeah.
as Sansa. And the reason why a lot of people still, like Theon Greyjoy, Theon
Mhm.
Greyjoy's character is because he knew
There are
that
some reactions. I think these reactions are to finding out what's actually in the book. Yeah, the books are.
yeah,
Anybody
so
who thinks that the shows are graphic, you don't have the stomach for the books.
yeah, so I know. So I'll tell you. So what happens in the books are so Sansa is so the friend is then married. Okay, we have 1.57 minutes remaining for this live session to end. So now I think we need to wrap up, guys. But I'm gonna finish this story. In Game
Yeah.
of Thrones, Sansa is not married to. In the books, she's not married to Ramsay Bolton. A friend of Sansa is who Peter
Yeah,
Baelish
yeah.
brought. And Theon Greyjoy, even though he knows that it is not Sansa, he never reveals that it is not Sansa, which is why a lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah. He
like.
pulls the Draco.
Yeah,
He pulls
and
a Draco. We get it.
yeah, and in the other hand, Littlefinger keeps Sansa for his own satisfaction, and they have a lot of into things going on between them, which is why probably the showmakers decided to take an alternate turn. But yes,
Yeah.
I think overall, all in all, it has been a very healthy discussion, even though we have discussed mostly
Yeah, I
fandom.
had so much
And
fun.
yeah, and probably, we have come to an agreement that, redemption arc by default are nice, but then again, the fact that you are changing a character completely does not make sense, I think, to both of us in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
And
Right. And
also, all heroes should be anti-heroes.
yeah,
Enough with goody two shoes heroes.
Guri to
It's
yeah,
yeah,
it does
it's
not
it's
work.
too
It does
long
not,
back in the past.
yes. Yes. So I think on that note, both Shruti and I would, call it a night. And because Shruti's internet connection is also sort of being patchy at this moment, and I'm going to catch up soon with her to discuss how
Yeah.
all her boys have not been the love of her life next, personally. So, if you want any more salacious gossip with Shruti Deb, be tuned because
Wow.
I'm gonna force her back into coming again for Chai with Chaitanya again in September. So that is
Dude,
it, guys.
happily.
This will
Yeah.
disconnect on its own. So before that,
Yeah.
Shruti, thank you